you get this sense at Anchor Down, but nobody's really, I mean, yes, there's a sense of competition, but there's also a great sense of camaraderie. And I can't
Definitely.
tell you how many times I've seen the person in the lead of Anchor Down slow down and chat with somebody and give advice to somebody literally in last place chasing their dream of finishing.
Our next guest on the pod is New England born and bred, if you count Connecticut. He's from the pride of Stonehill College. He's been a runner for most of his life, but he's a legend in what he does with the running community. Currently, he's drowning in spreadsheets in his volunteer master plan for this weekend's Anchor Down Ultra, which has been quoted as one of the best races in America. And we're wicked excited to welcome Jay Paganelli to the On the Runs podcast. What's up, Jay?
Hey, that was awesome, guys. What's going on? Thanks for having me.
We are so happy to have you, and I can vouch for it. Anchor Down is by far one of the best races I've run, and I've run quite a few races around America, so it gets my official seal of approval. So welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. You guys always have such a positive take on the running community and the ultra scene, the trail running scene. So it's an honor to be hanging out.
Aw, you're too kind.
That was actually Men's Health magazine that called Anchor Down one of the greatest or the best races in America. So you can do the whole dash
cool.
Men's Health magazine and dash Erica Hamill, just like you have the Wayne Gretzky and the guy from The Office. What's his name?
Michael Scott.
Yes, that's him. So yeah, man. But how you doing? How's life? You're a few hours south of us in Rhode Island. You're getting ready. You just showed me all the spreadsheets. It was all color coded and really nice too. You're really organized, unlike me right now.
Yeah. No, I'm. If you talk to any of our crew, I'm pretty OCD. The thing I learned quickly in race directing that the only thing that helps me sleep before an event is feeling like the plan is in place. I'm almost militaristic in the way we write a plan. And I always tell our volunteers, I'm like, you don't understand. You're not just going on a list. I'm like, you're a volunteer and like your name's going on a spreadsheet and that slot is fixed for you. So, I like I was saying to you guys, I'm drowning here in spreadsheets for our staff, for our volunteers. It's Anchor Down is, I think, special in that there's about 50 people that produce it, for 230 people that sign up for it, for about 200 people that will toe the line for it, for about 150 people that will finish it, right? So when you look at it that way, there's like an army of people. There's one staff for almost every 3 people. And by the end of the 24-hour event, there's nearly 1 staff for every 2 participants. So it's very intimate in that regard, but there's a lot of planning.
Well, I've said it before. I have a lot of respect for you and other race directors for putting on these huge feats. Because even though Anchor Down is a smaller race, so much goes into it. It's ridiculous. I'm sure you're planning it like the day after Anchor Down. You're planning next year, so it's a lot of work.
Probably earlier.
I mean, yeah, it could be like Boston where you're planning it 15 months ahead. Just absolutely incredible work, and it shows. Like, you go to the event and you can just tell how much heart and soul and effort is put into it, and it's just an amazing event.
Thank you. That means a lot. You're too kind.
You can quote Erica there. Anchor Down is up there with the Boston Marathon. She just put the two together on the same level, and I agree. But Jay, real quick, this is going to be a very Anchor Down based episode, but let's get to know you a little better, because we only have met you in the middle of the night at Anchor Down at Colt State Park. So give us a little quick background story on you. Let's start with maybe the day your mom went into labor and a story about your house.
All right. So I grew up in Connecticut. So born and raised in Connecticut, and skipping over that, my parents are still there. They still live in the house. I think Are you referencing my other podcast here from?
Yes. I got all my research is credited to the Cultura Trail Running Podcast. Thank you,
they're friends of ours
and everybody.
So they're still in the house. They bought the house I was born in the night I was born, and they're still there. They're actually visiting today, so they're probably chuckling in the basement listening to the podcast.
Yes,
but I grew up in Connecticut, and my first intro to running was as a fitness, like an athlete of other sports when I was young, and just thinking that it would be an addition to everything else I was doing. At that time, it was just basketball, just a kid who loved playing basketball. And then my height limited my success in that. So I ended up running through high school under Coach Dennis Lobo, and fell in love with running, but was absolute back of the packer. And, just in it for the sport and the camaraderie and my teammates and the sense of accomplishment, definitely. And ran throughout high school. And then in college, didn't even go near running, and kind of learned about marathoning, and had a couple friends that were marathon running or training for their first marathon as I was kind of preparing for graduation. And then I don't know what inspired me to do it, but I picked up, this is so cliche, it's almost embarrassing to admit. I didn't admit this on the other podcast. But I picked up Dean Karnassus's Ultramarathon Man, I believe, his first book. And I just remember I read that story.
No shame.
You guys, okay, so will you share that?
Yes. No shame.
Yeah. So, funny story. So I pick up that book and I read it, and it like sparked something in me, but it didn't hold right away. And I had been kind of training and running different distances. And I think I had already run a 10K just out of interest, and I had lost a bunch of weight. And I had started to be almost slightly competitive in local road races where I was like cracking the top 20, but I was like frustrated that I wasn't getting any faster. And I was like, gosh, if I just run, because I've always been like a bigger guy for a runner. And I remember thinking, gosh, if I just run farther, I might be able to like pull something off. So I just kept going farther and farther and getting more competitive in the farther stuff. And the thing about ultra running that really sucked me in, even like when you go back and reflect on Dean's book, the thing about Dean's book that was interesting to me was that it was like the endurance, mental and physical, to be able to just keep pushing and producing mileage and running outpace talent eventually if you were stupid enough to keep going. So
True.
I kind of kept running longer and longer, and I'm going to try to fast forward it, but I ended up being a running coach with a program called Team EFS in southeastern Massachusetts with about 20 to 30 athletes under me that were all recreational athletes looking to do the same thing I was, which was go into adulthood, like competing and running. And then found myself being somewhat competitive, at least enough for me, in what I would call the recreational ultra running scene, and then falling in love with it ever since.
That's awesome. I mean, I kind of feel you. I used to be a back of the packer. I have so much respect for them because they're on their feet the longest. They often have the most appreciation for the sport because they're out there for the love of it. They're doing it for themselves, not for anything else. And just trying to improve, push your limits a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further. So that's where I'm getting into trying to do distances I've never seen before. And it's such a cool feeling to try something different, try something new and see what we're capable of.
Absolutely. And it's a great, like, to me, ultra running is like a great human common denominator where like, and you get this sense at Anchor Down, but nobody's really, I mean, yes, there's a sense of competition, but there's also a great sense of camaraderie. And definitely. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the person in the lead of Anchor Down slow down and chat with somebody and give advice to somebody literally in last place chasing their dream of finishing. And I don't think you see that in any other form of endurance sports.
It's true. I agree.
Hey, you mentioned community earlier. Big thing for you is community. So what was that first draw into the running community before you were race directing? Like probably at the time that you're running in races and meeting people and probably meeting race directors and learning about the entire community. What was that draw that got you into the running community, especially here in New England?
Yeah, I'm going to reference two races that I think made me an ultra runner. And one, which is kind of days long gone, is the old Pineland Farms Trail Running Festival. Back in the early days when Eric Boucher was, I think that's how you say his last name, but hey, Eric. But he used to put that event on, and I would go to that every year with my wife, at the time girlfriend. And I just remember being there the second or third time and knowing everybody on the starting line from previous years and previous adventures. And it was like shaking hands and talking about last year's event. And oh my gosh, like, remember when you saved me with that S cap, or remember when like you fell on the trail and I helped pick you up, and like the war stories that came from that event, that really pulled me in, because I realized not only was it like a cult community, but there was a camaraderie unlike any other part of running that I had been involved in. And then around the lake 24 hour, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that event, but there's some of that event in the DNA of Anchordown. So that used to be around, I'm probably going to botch this name, but Lake Quinnipiac in Wakefield, Massachusetts, put on by the Somerville Roadrunners. And I ran that race. At that time, I had 2 races on my radar, the Western States 100 and Badwater. And I was running that every year to be exposed to the heat in July, to be exposed to running for 24 hours, to be exposed to the greater ultra running community. And that event, it was the same thing. It was like all these friends that I had developed over the years, and all these war stories of being on my feet for 24 hours. And I botched that event up so horribly. Like one year I quit at 40, one year I quit at 60, one year I had to drop because of an ankle issue at 82. But like I kept going back, and it was the same group of people that I became almost family with. And then my family was going to that same event. So my family knew their family, and they were sharing a tent at the finish line. And it just made me realize it was so much greater than sport. It was this like community that was trying to accomplish something that was really just authentic and old school and old fashioned and honest. Those 2 events like brought me into the sport, and I think like gave me a foundation of the sport that kind of led me to where I am.
That's awesome. Now I have to get a little sappy here. My first in-person ultra event was yours.
Hey,
it was 2021 Anchordown. And that was honestly where I got the taste of what like a new kind of community can be. Because you get your road runners and you see people at all these races, but you're not suffering like you do at a race like Anchordown. Like there's just something to be said about sharing a certain misery. Like it is the camaraderie and commiseration, and it's just awesome. So I've been coming back this will be my 4th year, and I am looking forward to seeing all of the friends that I've made. And it's so much fun. Like it really is an awesome community that you have built, and that's what got me into this whole ultra running thing.
That's awesome.
And let me tell you this, that year's race, I thought she was going to be one and done. I was like, no way. It's so freaking hot. It's in the middle of the night.
It was gross that year.
Her feet hurt. And then all of a sudden she's like signing up for the next one because of the people there, the volunteers, the staff. It was like the race sucked as far as how hot and humidity and how humid it was. I was miserable as a Sherpa, crew support. But I had a lot of fun because I met so many cool people. I met Callie's support crew, and that was a lot of fun. And then you met Zach, who we call Juice Box Guy.
Zach and Ainsley are like 2 of my favorite volunteers. Yeah, he saved me with a Capri Sun that year. But that's going into volunteers, which I hope we touch upon, because 100%, the level of volunteerism is just amazing.
But if it wasn't for your race and the community and the staff and the people, if it was just any other race, the heat and the humidity, I think, would have turned her away from ever doing something like that again. I'm not
asking
lying.
me if I would do a race like go run the Anchordown style in the heat, humidity, darkness, trail, I don't know, whatever else, by myself, and there's no way I would do it. But having everybody out there just being super encouraging, and like you said, just like stopping and chatting with somebody for a minute if you just need to walk, like it's something else, and it's special.
Well, I think, thank you. And I think that's one thing that I'm proud of, I'm proud of Anchordown for sort of maturing in that way. But in the beginning, in its DNA, that was something that I wanted to kind of hold true to, because in my opinion, you guys know this because you've been at Anchordown, and I feel like I repeat this too much, but it's true, right? There's like a DNA of ultra running. There's a tradition of ultra running that we're trying to honor with Anchordown. And I feel like that gets lost. And I don't, in a lot of ultra running nowadays, and I don't mean that as an insult to any other ultra, because every ultra has its place, right? I direct I'm very fortunate in what I get to do for a living, and I direct 10 races plus a year. And every race has its own sort of meaning to the running community. So there are races that are awesome because they're celebrations of the sport. They're parties for the sport. I put on one last month with 2,000 people, and people are celebrating and having fun, and they're running their first 10K, and their sister's running the half marathon, and those are feeders for the greater running community. And for those of us who like to run longer and farther and faster and try hard and do it year round, those races are celebrations of the sport. But the essence of ultra running is like you against you and testing your own limits. And that's got to be difficult. And if it's not difficult, then it certainly can be an ultra by definition of distance, but it's not the tradition of the sport of ultra running, right? The sport of ultra running should have a certain level of misery. Otherwise, in my opinion, it's not honest. And if it's popular because it's the flat course or the easy course or the course under fall foliage, it's like, that's great. And it serves this purpose, but it's not what I want Anchor Down to be. I want Anchor Down to be the tradition of misery.
Yes. And we'll get into that. We will spare no details on ADU, but let's maybe figure out a little more the identity and the birth of, you do race directing. You do over 10 races a year. You got the sign behind you, which is beautiful, True North Running Company. So maybe tell us how you got into race directing and what excited you about being a race director, and how you have kind of built this business around the running community and the sport of running.
Yeah, awesome. So True North Running Company began in 2009 under the name Endurance Fitness Systems, and we were a coaching program. So I had a mission statement of combining what I loved with, like, I wanted to give it to other people. So I was like, you know what? I didn't know where I was going with it, but I wanted to introduce people to the sport that I loved and to make it more accessible for people that just look to seek it out as a recreational avenue for fitness. So we had a program that was our most popular. I had one-on-one coaching client. I had in its peak, I had maybe 40 to 50 athletes a year. But our most popular program was Team EFS. It was this, and if any of those people are watching, I love you, I miss you, but it was this like community of 30 or 40 people that we like shared the sport together, and it was a team training program. So we had every single week, and I feel like this is an important detail to share, but every single week we had like 3 or 4 pieces of the program. So like on Tuesday night, there'd be like open water swim. On Thursday night, there'd be like a pool swim. On Saturday morning, there'd be the team training workout around a pond in Stoughton, Massachusetts. And then there would be like seasonal races. So it was this program where you signed up and you were part of this community. And because of that, I fell in love with what the community of the running community could do for people. And that grew to like 30 to 40 people at peak. And I remember the passionate runner and coach in me was frustrated with the business realities of running that program because it couldn't sustain itself. So I was still working full time, and I'm still doing everything that I had to be doing to make that work. And I thought, at that time we had like an email list of like 150 clients that I had ever coached, or 200 clients that I'd ever coached. And I go, gosh, we should put on some sort of road race, right? And if we put on a road race, maybe we'll grow that email list to 250, and that'll be good for the coaching program. It'll be good for the athletes because they'll get a free spot in the race, and it'll kind of be a complement to each other. So that first race was the Narragansett Summer Running Festival, if any of you guys are familiar with that.
I ran it 2 years ago.
Hey, all right.
No, wait, not last year, the year before that. But yes, so that's a lot of fun. It's very, very hot and humid, or usually around that time too. But
it
does. I sense a theme on the hot and humidity.
Yeah. So we put on that, and in our first year, that was a very different day in race directing. The running community was still growing, and now it's in a little bit of a contraction. But that first year we put it on with 1,100 people. I was expecting 200. And
wow.
Like, to be honest with you, just as a runner that was like passionate about what I was doing, I was like, wait a second. I just we ran stats that first year. We asked people in a survey when they were signing up, and 47% that first year were new to the distance that they had signed up for.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden at the end of that event, we had 1,300 people on our email list. Right. So I'm going, wow, like we just impacted the community I care about. We literally put on this huge celebration of the sport. And like, I'm going to put more effort and more time into that because I felt like I was able to accomplish our mission, which was grow the sport, right? Bring people into the sport.
Yeah.
And that's how I was lucky enough to find myself being a race director. And then fast forward, that was, we're deep into our second decade of that event. Since then, in the production of that event, it evolved and grew, and we got better at it. And companies and nonprofits, a lot of nonprofits and charities started reaching out saying, we really have heard the reputation of the production value of that event. We want you to help us grow and attract more runners to our event. So now we work, race directed, going fast forward here. I've race directed from California to Florida. We don't get into stuff that's too big, just because my interests are more in like the smaller community events, but races from 100 people up to 5,000. And last year we put on, I think, 16 events in 2023, half for charity and half for like corporate partnerships that want to reach the running community. And it's been one heck of a ride. And I think, I insinuate this every year at Anchor Down, but I'm a race director by trade now, here almost 2 decades in. But Anchor Down's like the passion project where, because I'm fortunate enough to be a race director for a living, Anchor Down is when I get to set all the rules of the business of being a race director aside and just put on the event I want to put on and my crew wants to put on. And you could tell, like, where it's like, a popular event would be on a nice time of year. And we're like, we're going to host it on the hottest, most humid time of the year in Rhode Island. And it would be a flat, runnable course. And we're like, no, we're going to make it half single track trail that's rooty and like really difficult to run on, and half shadeless pavement. And we were like, we're just going to put on the toughest.
And a patch of grass.
Yeah. Yes.
I did a patch of grass. Slippery as all hell in the middle of the night, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah, the little downhill.
Yes.
I'm like, I go down like sideways. Like, I slid on my butt once. It just, however to get down, it happens.
That's awesome. Adds authenticity.
It does.
So yeah, basically Anchor Down is the passion project. That's a byproduct of what I get to do for a living. And without any of the rules of if you took like a person who owns restaurants, and they had all these restaurants, but they knew this is how a menu should be written, and they should be open for these hours. But they had a dream restaurant that got rid of all those rules because it's the restaurant they wanted to put out there. That's what Anchor Down is. Anchor Down is the event that I always envisioned that I would love to sign up for, that I just think is honest. It's why I don't want, we don't do an expo. We don't do sponsorship. It's so funny to hear reaction of, we have our promise to the runners that it gets one sponsor every year. And that sponsor has to share the vision of what Anchor Down is going to be. And it's so funny to hear sponsors call and go, how much to sponsor Anchor Down? And we go, no, we're not interested, but we have all these other events we could chat about. But Anchor Down's its own thing. And that's
super cool
as a race director, because it's a vacation from what I do for a living.
So let me ask you something on the business standpoint then, with how Anchor Down's your passion project. The other 10 races a year that you do, are those helping you support Anchor Down? And I'm not just talking finance-wise, but like liability-wise and insurance and everything. So I'm guessing as a race director, you have to worry about that stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without our footprint in the running community, we could not produce Anchor Down in the way we produce Anchor Down. Just to give you an idea, just the golf cart that we use at Anchor Down to like bring staff around and for medical emergencies, and like to bring volunteers around. I mean, just that golf cart's a $10,000 machine, literally custom built for road races, right?
Wow.
So it's again, all our other races, not that I'm not passionate about those, like those events all serve their purposes, right? Like event we brought up, the Narragansett Summer Running Festival, is an event that I would sign up for, and I would bring 5 college friends and my family and stay the night and make a whole weekend of it. And it would be like my fun race for the summer. Very, very different than Anchor Down, right? Still serves its purpose. Still something I'd want to sign up for, but it's not Anchor Down. But all those bigger funnel events that allow us to have a larger footprint in the running community add to the pie that we are allowed to draw from for Anchor Down. And our Anchor Down first year, we lost our shirt. right? We had 80 people sign up, but we were able to follow those rules of like, this is what we're doing and we're sticking to it and we don't care what happens. And I feel for any race director that's trying to put something authentic out into the running community, because that's really, really hard to do. And if you're on the hook for losing 20 grand to do that, it's much harder to do. You know?
That's true.
Yeah.
What was the first year of Anchor Down? Was it, I want to say 2015?
2015, you nailed it. Yep.
Well, that was perfect, Erica, for us to like get into the start of Anchor Down. So one thing we like to do here, Jay, is spare no details. Typically, that's like a code brown, spare no details. Give us all everything.
Oh, I'm sure he has stories about like past 80
Well, I'm
years
sure there's stories about like struggle or like hard shit. But it's Anchor Down. It's Colt State Park, Rhode Island. You got a 6, a 12, and a 24-hour race. It starts at 7 p.m. It's hot and humid. Spare no details on like the birth and the evolution of Anchor Down.
Yeah, all right. So first of all, when I launched Anchor Down, I still hadn't figured out what we were really presenting to the running community, but I knew I wanted it to turn off most people. I knew that.
Yep.
Right? So I wanted most runners to hear about it and be like, screw that. Like that's what we were going for. Because we wanted something that was honest. And like, so I chuckle about it now, but I think I still have the logo saved like somewhere on my computer. But we were like designing the logo for the first event, and I'm just sitting there at like 9:00 at night watching movies, like coming up with all these different ideas. And it was the Dizzy Lobster Ultramarathon. Because we were just like, what do we have in Rhode Island, right? Like, we're going to put on this race that we want to be like a Western States or a Badwater, but we're in Rhode Island. Like, we don't have all we have is coastline. Not that that's a bad thing, but we have coastline. We don't have mountains. We don't have deserts. We can't make it hard because of our terrain. So we're going to make it hard because of who we are. And we're Rhode Island. And what is Rhode Island but, especially in the endurance running community with a heritage of ultra running, you know, in the Nifty 50 and all these races that are now folklore, or now history, I should say. But I was like, we have coastline and we should just run the hell out of that coastline. So it was the Dizzy Lobster. And then I was like, that's so cute. It doesn't work. Right?
You would honestly get me with that one. I'll be like, okay, that is really cute. So, I mean, it depends who you're trying to attract.
So yeah, we launched Anchor Down. We announced it, I think, in the beginning of 2015 with like 3 or 4 months to go. We kind of set out. So my company is True North Running Company, and the company is really, our stage to do most of our work, which is race directing for other nonprofits and entities for their charity walks and things of that nature. So I basically set aside a budget of what would have been like, quite frankly, our profit. And I said, okay, this is something that's we're going to be able to give back to the running community that I think the running community needs and wants and I want to do. And we set that aside and we announced it, and we went into August of 2015 prepping for it. And eventually somehow I came to the name of Anchor Down. And as you could tell, I'm a little bit of a tattooed person. And to me, it had like this old school Sailor Jerry-esque, like tough pride ring to it. And I said, that's what we're going for. We want it to sound a little bit scary. We want it to sound nautical. We want it to sound proud Rhode Island. So we announced it. And then I think the nitty gritty story to give you, which is maybe a little bit of a personal tidbit, is so we were in our first house. I moved down to Rhode Island, fell in love with my wife, and moved down to Rhode Island because we wanted to start a family, wanted to get closer to family. So we lived in our first house, which is on Main Street, which is 2 miles away from Colt State Park, on the same road in the next town over. So it was very like visceral for me. And we're setting up that night in that house, which was like this old colonial. We don't live in it anymore. This old colonial on Main Street had like a shell driveway in the front, and we had like all these U-Hauls lined up. And all week we're loading these U-Hauls. And I just remember looking at 3 U-Haul trucks for an event for 80 people with every piece of equipment we owned in race directing, and being like, what the hell are we doing? Right?
Going all out.
Yeah. And that night, my wife, so my son had just been born in June. So that night, I'm explaining to my wife, we were like coming up with a menu for the Cogshell Farm aid station. At that time, it was just the aid station. So we're coming up with the menu, and we advertised it on the website, and we wanted the menu. I always respected races that like told you ahead of time what you were getting so the athletes can prepare. And then the menu included baked potatoes with salt and pepper on them so you could get your sodium up. So my wife's in the house all day on our gas stove in this 1920s house making baked potatoes and slicing them by the tray full. By my calculation, the amount we needed. She cooked so many potatoes that our carbon monoxide detectors went off at 11:30 at night, the night before anchor down.
No.
So the fire department in Warren comes. I've never told anybody this story. The fire department in Warren comes.
It's an OTR exclusive.
Yeah, there you go. So they forced my family and I to leave, get in an ambulance, take my newborn to the emergency room, and we stay overnight so they could test them for carbon monoxide poisoning while my kitchen is filled with anchor down food supplies. And we get back at 11 o'clock in the morning to run to Colt State Park to set up for a 7 p.m. start to stay up the next. So by the time I went to bed, it was Sunday, and I had been up for like 50-something hours. And
Lucky it was a 7 p.m. start.
What's that?
It's a blessing you actually chose the 7 p.m. start. You had
I know.
a day there. Yeah.
I know.
Imagine if it was a 7 a.m. start and you had to go to the hospital.
Yeah. I know.
Oh, no.
So that, and you know, over the years, race directing is like that, right? Like it's very, very personal. It's very intimate. There are like anybody whose job who they're passionate about it. Like there's times where you feel like you give your soul to it. But we had that a couple years ago. We put my pet down an hour before I gave the opening speech at Anchor Down, and I felt like he was part of it because he sat in my lap every day when like we designed it, right? And it's
one of the hardest things in life you'll ever do.
Absolutely.
Yes, I've been there.
You know, it's like it's one of those things where that's to me where races are the most honest. Is they're put on by a runner for runners with the authenticity of the running community, and none of the business bullshit that sometimes does like enter our sport, which is what we've tried to keep it from the very beginning. So I like those stories because they remind me like to keep it that way.
I'm so sorry to hear about your dog because I've been there multiple times. But maybe because it was just within hours, that was almost a little bit of a blessing.
Yeah.
Like you had the Anchor Down community, you had your passion project to get you. Like I lost my last dog that passed away was on Super Bowl Sunday, a couple hours before, you know, the big game, which I don't even watch football. And I just kind of sat in my living room doing nothing, no TV or anything. Like I didn't have something to distract my mind. And you probably had the greatest thing ever to distract your mind right there with your community, the ADU community you built. So that's thinking of that's probably a terrible thing, but maybe with the right people. Moments, you know, in those moments after.
I agree with you. It's almost like a gift. It's like, you know, I'm fortunate to get to do what I get to do, and I wake up excited to do it. So it was, I don't want to admit I almost teared up giving the opening speech at Anchor Down, but a little bit was like for my buddy that we just had to put down because I felt like he got me through some tough moments of like prepping for that and 22-hour days in front of the computer and the stuff that runners don't see that RDs go through. He was like right there with me. So it was almost like he was part of that process.
It's making me so sad. You mentioned the aid station, how you were baking all those potatoes. And I have to tell you, that was a selling point, a total selling point. So one of my best running friends, Rachel, she found your race and was like, hey, check out this race. Like, this is like the most epic aid station I've ever seen. And it went to list so many delicious options. And of course, like just thinking about it, you're like, oh, this sounds so good. I can't wait to like get my hands on this food. So we got in, I think the year before you had cutoffs. So we luckily got in that was my first real ultra. And I have to say, it is absolutely as epic as she described it to me. So you have like the midnight pizza party, you've got all the potatoes, you've got watermelon with salt on it, like just every little thing a runner could want. So
your son has like a lemonade stand there.
It was being painted in the driveway today.
Yes. Grayson, am I right? Is it Grayson?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, those freeze pops are amazing. But yeah, so where did you think of all of the stuff that any runner may want while they're out there on the course?
So that was largely just my personal experience in ultra running. To be honest, in the beginning, and then I just listened to the feedback of runners saying like, hey, this was a highlight, or this is what I felt was really missing. And in full disclosure, I've probably become a little bit stubborn with it now, because it's like eventually when we've heard enough feedback, I know we have the core and I know it's sustainable. So at some point I've gotten defensive, because I'm like, well, if you want something outside of that, we need you to like bring that in, because we're hitting the, like, we want to be elite in the way we serve the mass group of the 200. So anything outside of that we think makes that unsustainable, I've probably in the last 2 years, I've become like, all right, we've got it dialed in. That's the menu. Don't argue with me.
Yeah, you're not going to get any complaints from me.
But it's funny because like you say that now, but Bill at Hamster Wheel has become like a good ultra running race directing friend that we commiserate and talk a couple times a year. And I'm just like, I'm never trying to be you, because like what he can do at that race, like we've talked about, right? An authentic race serves its purpose and it doesn't try to be something else. And his race, number one, can be so much bigger because of where it is. And number two, they have like these resources, and him and his wife, Darcy, I believe her name is. Like
Darby.
Is it Darby?
Darby, yep. So we're in New Hampshire, and that's actually quite like very close to where we are. So I've run Hamster Wheel. I'm going to be doing it this year. This will be my 3rd year. And that aid station, but they have the means. They have the whole mess hall and the electricity, and
that's why
you guys have
Well, you guys know Chris Capellini, right? Chris Capellini, who wins Anchor Down every year.
Of course. He's pretty much the GOAT, yeah. Yeah,
Chris busts my chops every year. He's like, you don't want to compete with Bill and Darby? Like, get that menu
Where's
a
your
little
grilled
bit
cheeses,
better.
man?
All right? We're doing our thing. But, like, I think with Anchor Down, we try to strike a balance in that I don't want, like, it's not just going to be, like, an elite Olympic event. Like, it is an ultra, so its roots should be in ultra running. And in ultra running, if you're running far enough, long enough, and pushing yourself enough, there needs to be real sustainable food. But at the same time, we want it to be a little bit elevated, because most of the people at Anchor Down are running their A race of the year. And maybe it's a dream race. Maybe it's something they've tried now, especially 3 times to get into, couldn't, and finally got in. So we want it to be predictable. And we want it to be something where you know what the menu is, that's above and beyond what you would get at a running club ultra marathon, but one step below what the party event would be. So we do the pizza because it's something to look forward to, and it brings the 6, 12, and 24-hour event together. But if we did, like we joked around one year about doing like a margarita party, like a virgin margarita party at 4 a.m. And I'm like, we might be tipping into something else, changing what we're doing. So the DNA of it was started with just things that I saw working for other people and worked for me at races, and then 2 or 3 years of feedback from the athletes at Anchor Down.
Well, that's perfect. Whatever you guys are doing, keep it up. You're nailing it. I've never felt myself wanting something you didn't have. So I think you guys are doing a great job with what you've got.
Thank you. It's not just me. Like, I can't tell you, I could think of Candace, one of our volunteers this year.
Oh, we love Candace. Yep.
Yeah. So like,
that was my next.
What, really? I read your mind. She just, she reached out to me last year, and she's like, hey, we ran out of watermelon. And I was like, yeah, that was the one thing we missed the mark on. She's like, I'm going to own that next year. Like, I'm going to get a cooler. I'm going to go out and buy watermelon like a week before the event. I'm going to chop it up and bag it, and I'm going to come with 5 times as much. Like, literally offering for that to come out of her pocket, her time. So as the event matures, the
Candace.
people that are giving back to it do with it, and people give more, and I think we get better and better, and the runners just see the end product, which is a better day for the runner,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to bounce off Erica there with what she talked about your aid station, but like just your whole crew, your staff. In your first race, I think was 80. Like how did you get all the staff and the volunteers for that first race, and then how did they grow? You got Ainsley and Zach and Candace from the aid station that we've met. We met so many of them. You got the guys who hang out at the aid station on the other side of the park. You got people who come in throughout the day. Like it's not just a 24-hour event because you're there before and you're there after. So let's just call it 36. Like you have a lot of staff, a lot of volunteers. We're not just talking, like we're also talking Patrick Karen shows up and does a lot for you there as well. So you got a lot of people. How did you get them all in and to keep coming back, and talk about your staff a little bit? You're in the volunteers.
Yeah, so I'll talk about them separately, I guess. My staff is incredible. So I guess that's a little bit businessy, but at runtruenorth.com, I try to keep it updated. Our staff, let's put it this way. When I'm talking to a new charity client that's hiring us for a charity event, most of my staff have been involved in the production, probably on average, of 200 to 500 running events. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So we are, I have staff members that I don't even consider them staff members. I consider them allies in the production of the events that we produce. So John Santillo, Brian Beaujolais, I mean, those guys have literally run thousands. John actually ran, we produce a race with Narragansett Beer, just an absolute party of an event, also in Bristol, Rhode Island, called the Narragansett Summer Nights 5K. John ran that as his 1,000th road race in his personal running. And we had to block off the afternoon for him so he could run it and then come back to the staff right after the finish line of the event. So when I'm surrounded by people that want to give back to the sport, and trust me, none of them are doing it for the money. They're blocking out weekends from however they feed their family to help produce road races. So yes, they are staff, but it's largely their passion project. With Anchor Down, it's the culmination of all of them. And I always joke with them. There's we have events that are better paying than others because there's all these hours available, and they're going for 4 days from their family. We're getting in a car, we're staying in a hotel in New York or New Jersey, and we're producing this charity event, whatever. Well, Anchor Down, it's the worst paying gig ever because it's move in for 30 hours and you get a little paycheck and say goodbye to your family for 3 straight days, and you'll come back with a sunburn and sand in your lungs from the parking lot. So I'm surrounded by people that care about it. Some of them have run ultras, some of them haven't. I have Western States finishers on my staff. People that again finished 1,000 races. They're really all there to give back to the sport. I have staff members that we've lost. Again, you're gonna make me sappy, but we've lost in the last couple of years that have been at Anchor Down. That in their last couple of years were not doing well health wise, and we're still at Anchor Down for 16-hour shift straight with a little nap that a volunteer granted.
That's some real dedication.
That was Steve. Yeah. So I cannot say enough about my staff. They give back to it every year, and almost every single one of them has been with True North and Anchor Down, therefore, since they joined up. They've never said, no, that's a long weekend. They've always said, put me in, where do you need me to be, and how, do I get to take a 20-minute nap in the 30 hours? So they are amazing humans and runners themselves, every single one of them. The volunteers at Anchor Down, the best way I could sum that up, and I know we were chatting before we went live here for recording, but this is our current combination of volunteer spreadsheet. So it's an absolute army that the runners really don't see. They see the volunteers that are facing the runner, but they don't see the volunteers that are shutting down the park. They don't see the volunteers that are usually stopping traffic. There are volunteers that their only job is to run back and forth from the grocery store to make sure that the runner doesn't know that at some point we ran on a watermelon. And that's the volunteer's only job. They don't get to see their family member. They don't get to see the start, the finish, the fanfare. They are literally doing something thanklessly without the runner even knowing about it. And there are dozens of them. And the average volunteer shift at Anchordown, I haven't done the math this year. I did it last year, I think, when I gave the little pre-race speech, but I think last year was like 11-hour average shift.
Wow.
And what happens is some people say, like, well, what I would say in a first year, I'd say, oh, I'm busy. I have a 8-year-old at home. I got to do this with my wife, and I got to go grocery shopping on Saturday, but I can give you 5 hours. 9 times out of 10, that person calls me back the next year and go, I can't believe I had to leave before the end of the 6-hour event. This year, I'm there for all 12 hours. Can you put me in for all 24 hours? I'm bringing a 10. So the volunteer crew is like none other in ultra running. In the first year, we did it with a skeleton crew, and I probably almost killed 10 friends of mine who I coaxed into it. We all, including me, almost dropped dead. And then, it's an amazing community. My father-in-law is there for 24 straight hours. My father's there for 24 straight hours. My son's there for 24 straight hours, even though he takes a nap with mom. My wife's there gets out of work early and leaves her day job to get there at 4:00 and manage registration, and leaves at 10:00 the following night and sleeps in a tent. So there's a committed group of people that are dead set on seeing the runners hit the finish line.
It really is incredible. I do have so much respect for everybody who has a piece of this race. Like the volunteers and the staff, even the runners, are what make it so special.
It means a lot, and I hope I hope volunteers and staff see this and they realize how much the running community appreciates it. Because sometimes they're shuffling cones around or passing out vests or driving the golf cart to bring water to the aid station, and they sometimes don't get the same view of things that the race director gets.
That's one thing I try to do as a runner. I know that there would be no event without you guys, so I will try to. Everyone I will see. I know there are so many people behind the scenes, but everybody I see, I will try to learn their name. I will try to say thank you every time I run by. I want them to know how appreciated they are, because this wouldn't happen without them. So let this podcast serve as my thank you overall to what you guys do for the running community and for Anchordown itself.
Well, I couldn't learn any of their names last year, Erica, because you kept calling them all Barbie. They'd be like, hey, Barbie. And you'd be like, hey, Barbie. And I was like, everyone's called Barbie. But no, I wanted to ask fun. This is the only like ultra you race direct, correct?
Yeah.
Like overnight.
So last year we raced, the last 2 years we race directed the Rhode Island Trail Classic, which was a little bit of another passion project, but with more respect for the fact that we wanted to create another ultra marathon in Rhode Island that could be a feeder for Anchordown.
Yeah.
Because obviously Anchordown's gotten tougher to get into, right? So, and we're trying to respect that. To be honest with you, it was a huge financial loss for us to produce 2 years. And we were getting, 180 runners and trying to keep what I would consider a reasonable entry fee. And people are like, oh, why didn't you keep that? We loved it. I'm like, well, we needed 500 runners a year to love it, to continue to produce it. So we ended up just seeing the writing on the wall. And I feel a little bit elitist as a race director when I say that, because there are some race directors going, well, I have 80 people and we make it work. If you've been to Anchordown, our style is a little bit different. We don't just say go and put out a couple cones. There's a production, and we're trying to set the stage for success. And every other race, even though a race might be on a smaller budget, they are different productions, right? So some races are needed in the running community. Some of my favorite races are a guy or a girl with a couple cones and a starting pistol, and those were the best races, right? 3, 2, 1, go. See you at the finish line. You don't get a shirt, maybe you get a banana, and we'll have a beer at the finish line that you're going to pay for. And those are some of the best races, but it's not our style. Our style is a true event that you're going to carve out a weekend for. Maybe you're going to train for. In the case of Anchordown, maybe you're going to spend 3 years of your life thinking about to get into. And that's why we take great pride in it. So we, unfortunately, an event needs to be so well received by the running community that we proceed with it. And the Trail Classic, we ended up saying, okay, people aren't as excited about this as we are. So we ended up saying, okay, we'll figure out what's next.
Gotcha.
Well, I don't want to go so far off the tracks, but it just sparks my head here in my mind. Like, how do you budget beforehand? Like, what's the goal? this is your passion project, so I'm sure you're looking to make thousands and thousands and thousands of
Still have to
dollars.
make
Like,
a
is the
living,
goal
though.
to break even? I know you usually cap it off around 230. Like,
Yep.
you don't want it to be 500. That's way too many. But like, you have to obviously, do all your checks and balances and cross your T's and dot your lowercase J's and make sure you're not taking a huge loss every time just for a passion project. Am I right?
Absolutely. And Anchor Down is a very expensive event, right? So keep in mind, we are taking a state park, and I mean this with every compliment, and I'm not saying this for political reasons. Like, the state of Rhode Island has been amazing to our team and I, or my team and I. And when you think about what we are asking them to do, we are going to a state park with a staff that deserve to be paid, with subcontractor staff that deserve to be paid, that are in the same staffing shortages that every police department and fire department are in, that can't get people to work, right? We're saying to them, we know you're open from 9 a.m. to, sunset, and we want to produce an incredibly volatile, highly risky event where we're going to call multiple ambulances a year. I mean, I'm saying it like it is, right?
Mm-hmm,
And probably get a news story every once in a while, which we average like 2 a year, about like the liability of this event. And we're going to do that when none of your staff are here. And we want to do that in like 3 months. And there's really nothing financially in it for the state of Rhode Island. Right? So the state of Rhode Island has to look at that and go, and I'm getting a little off track, but the state of Rhode Island has to look at that and go, the argument we made with the state years ago was, listen, I'm a Rhode Islander now, right? At that time, just recently a Rhode Islander. And I'm going, this is my favorite place to run. And this is like one of the most beautiful places to run in the Ocean State. So the people that run the most, we should showcase it to those people. So this is an elite group of ultra runners that run a stupid amount of mileage. And we should have a place here in the Ocean State to do that. And if we can't do that in our most beautiful state park, where can we do it? And that's what we presented to them. So going off on the budget, a lot of what happens with an event like Anchor Down is you have to get people to go, I will help you accomplish that, and it's not about the money. It is very different from other type of road races, right? So your average road race, what runners don't think about is they're signing up to run a blank, blank, blank 5K. Every time you step on a new piece of property, right? This is a beautiful race. I'm going to run this like part of town, and then I'm going to go through this natural preserve, and then I'm going to go through this natural like scenic little vista, and then we're going to go through this guy's private property, and we're going to go back to the starting line. Eventually, every single one of those people, even though they are well-intentioned and they might be runners themselves, they're going to have a lawyer that goes, you need to collect this amount of money for this to be worth it. And you have to get this insurance policy, and you have to do X, Y, and Z. And to put on an ultramarathon, that is a crazy extreme more, because everybody's lawyer is going to tell them, don't go near that thing, right? So Anchor Down, the budget is extensive for an ultramarathon. It's by far the most expensive event we produce per runner, probably by threefold. But there's so many parties coming together, including staff, right? Including a volunteer list of 30 that expect nothing, or 40 that expect nothing. Staff that are working for half of what they normally would, tirelessly for 2.5 weeks, loading trucks and unloading trucks. You need that. So everybody's got to get the shared vision. And I think that goes back to the quality of the event, right? Like, if the vision is high quality enough, like I look at the ones that I'm not involved with that I see as that high level. I look at the Western States, I look at Badwater, I look at Pineland in those days, and I just see the events, and you could see the passion oozing from the people that are putting that on at the aid stations, the way the courses are marked. And those events you could pull off because the community comes out and makes them happen. And you can see the events, especially nowadays as a runner. You guys know, right? Like, you guys know the events where there's like some big corporation involved, and there's like one volunteer handing out water that's grumpy to be there, and they're sitting in like a lawn chair with like an arrow written on their foot telling you to go that way.
Bare minimum, yep.
Yeah, and those are the events that are going away. That's why races are that's why the New England Runner calendar is shrinking, because there's a lot of those races.
I was looking at my race registration, seeing what I paid for Anchor Down, and honestly, it's not as much as you could charge. You could jack that price up and I would hand it over. So just saying that.
Everyone's gonna blame you next year if I go up $2.
They probably will. I mean, reasonably, everything.
They're gonna blame us.
With
They're
inflation.
Gonna say, damn that On the Runs podcast said you're not charging enough.
Honestly, a 2 liter of Coke these days is like $8, I swear. So like factor that in. Like a couple
Coke only costs you $8. Oh wait, what kind of Coke you talking?
Oh God, come on. I said a 2 liter. But you are still making it like affordable-ish. Yeah. I mean, it's a race, like, but I would pay more for it. I mean, I don't speak for everyone. Well, but I would pay more for it.
Let me get into this now. It's not easy to get into.
No.
And I know a couple years ago you created some more rules on how to get in. This isn't the race that just some local person from down the road sees it on a flyer at the local Hannafords and says, "Oh, I'm going to go run around Colt State Park." Like, you can't get into this easily. Go into detail on how someone can run Anchor Down and why you put those
qualification standards.
Why you put those qualifications in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the qualification standards were meant to do two things. So every year my team and I sit down and we basically just round table it out. We try to take our race director hats off and put on our runner hats and look at every event through the eyes of a runner. And Anchor Down was developing two problems. One, the event was amazing, right? We were proud of what we had created as a community with the running community. We were not proud of the fact that if you wanted to get into it as a first-time participant, you would struggle to do so. So you had this community that you've heard about that you want to get into that you can't touch. Or maybe worse is you have somebody that's like, let's put yourself in Cappellini's shoes, right? Or Kathy's shoes from last year, or Maria Chevalier's shoes. Somebody who's won the thing. And you go to sign up the next year and you can't get into it. So you're last year's champion and you didn't type fast enough. Like, it's like, that's just as bad, but it's like more comical, I guess. Right?
Mm-hmm. And I would feel that. That's rough.
Yeah. So we're going, okay, we have to protect both those interests. And if you become part of the community, you should have a vested interest in being back. And if you want to get into it, you should have a path to get into it. But you should have to show credential and a passion for being a part of it. So that's where we created the qualification standards. So the qualification standards are threefold. There's three paths to entry. So preferred entry, and for somebody who gets overwhelmed hearing this, go on the website, take your time.
You do a very good job with the website. It does spell everything out perfectly with all the steps and all that good stuff. So.
Yeah, it's funny. It turns some people off. They're like, I don't have time for that. I'm like, well, you definitely
don't
train for Anchor Down.
It weeds them out.
Yeah. So there's a preferred entry path, and I won't get into the specifics, but people can go on the website. But the preferred entry path, there's no guarantees because every year demand goes up. But the preferred entry path to this point, anybody who has sought entry to Anchor Down in preferred entry has gotten entry. Everybody. So when people are like, well, it's exclusive, they made all these impossible qualification standards. If you read the preferred entry path, there's paths for almost every runner, not including speed. If you don't read them and you make no effort in the year prior to your attempted entry to Anchor Down, that's correct. You will not get into Anchor Down, and we've done our job. So the people that have made the effort to get into Anchor Down have contributed to the greater ultra running community outside of anything we're doing, have been a part of the ultra running community outside of anything we're doing, have learned from other ultra runners, again, outside of anything we're doing, they will get an entry. So far, that has proven true, and when it's not, we'll reevaluate if that happens. Then there's the second tier, which is standard entry, which is when Anchor Down opens to the public. So that's nobody that's done any foresight into planning for an entry into Anchor Down. That sells out this year. I believe it was like 20 seconds. So it's a race to get in.
Didn't you break the internet?
we broke the website. We broke our registration platform. Yep. I had to reset it 3 times. And I get you get a couple nasty emails here and there, and I go, well, but preferred entry was yesterday, and 100% got in. So we're okay with that. And then, because again, it's something that creates that it earns pride to even get into. So therefore, it shouldn't be easy to get into, because that's how the sport was founded, right? It's like, we're not doing the it's not the type of event where everybody gets like the feel goods. Like, I've said no to people that miss the finish line by 50 feet multiple times. And lastly, there's a qualification. There's a third tier, which is called an application, which we reserve race management, which is our race committee, our staff essentially sit down around a round table. We have a pile of dozens of applications of people that like, I want entry into Anchor Down because of this. And we leave that to complete interpretation of the race committee. So we have people, this is maybe where my personality in ultra running comes out a little bit, but I qualified for the Western States 7 times in a row. I'm now a runner that can't run the big distances I used to. We won't get into that. That was another podcast. But so I kind of look at that, and I'm it's like a little bit of a chip on my shoulder with ultra running, in that I qualified so many years for something I really wanted to do and never got my ticket to do it. So the third tier of entry into Anchor Down is, listen, I'm an outlier, and here's my reason. We've had active duty military that haven't been able to compete for 3 years that are back, and they're like, well, here's all the badass stuff I've done. Let me in an Anchor Down. And that's obviously right at the top of the list. We've had tons of medical emergencies where they've been out. We've had people that are in the middle of a medical emergency, and it might be their last event, which we won't get into because we don't want tearjerkers, but you might have known that from previous Anchor Downs. They're outliers that we think should be looked at outside of our qualification system because it's imperfect, and we reserve 10 spots and only 10 spots a year for that. And that this year, we awarded those full 10 out of that stack of applications. And that's the path. It's not easy, and you got to type fast unless you're preferred entry.
You got to work for it. I mean, but it is worth it, let me tell you.
Jay, I got to tell you this. Last year, we're in the middle of recording with a guest. Yeah. We had to pause so she could sign up for ADU.
Yeah. I was like, was it Ruth? I think it was like Ruth. I was like, can I swear I never do this, but I have an excuse.
And because like the sign up time started at like, we'll just call it 7 p.m. And so we're in the middle of recording. And that brings me to, this race starts at 7 p.m. Why did you choose the 7 p.m. start time?
Oh God, I got to give that credit to Around the Lake 24-hour in Wakefield, Mass. So I ran that every year for maybe, 4 or 5 years, and just have great memories with my family at that event. Like we talked about, I met I don't know if you guys know of Akos Konya, who won Badwater back in like the early 2000s. And I ran it with him one year, and just have all these like amazing memories of the camaraderie about starting an hour before the sun goes down in the middle of summer, and the experience of the sun going down and you realizing that when the sun comes up, you're not even halfway through your event, right? And it was so sadistic to me. I was, again, going back to what Anchor Down was meant to be. I was like, this is not going to be an easy ultra that's meant to be. We wanted it to be welcoming. I don't mean it to mean like it wasn't good. We didn't want it to be welcoming, but we wanted it to be welcoming into this cult community that was trying to do something incredibly difficult. So to me, the 7 o'clock thing is so much harder than starting, for me, and everybody's got their own opinion, obviously. But
I agree.
Me, starting at 7 o'clock is so incredibly difficult because of what you go through at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, when you might be multiple marathons or on your second marathon already. And you're like, gosh, the reward of another 5 hours is sunup, and then I'm not even halfway. It's sadistic. And, that's why we did it that way.
I just think it does add that extra level of difficulty because you're not waking up at 5 p.m. to run a 7 p.m. race. You're up at God knows what time in the morning. So that just adds extra time that you are awake.
Right.
So that throws a wrench right back in.
And some people come from work. God love them. I always.
Oh my God.
I always took that Friday off back in the day, but like people are like, yeah, I got off shift an hour ago and I ran over. I'm like,
oh my God. That's hardcore. I'm not there, but good for them.
Yeah, I think one day, because I've gone every year with Erica, I think she got dropped off at my work, and I worked that day, and then I went down with you. So, and then last year we decided we need to leave super early because the traffic getting there was awful, and we still ran into terrible traffic.
3 o'clock in the afternoon when we left at like 11. We're like, what is happening?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, and this year is no different with the Washington Bridge down. Our pre-race email goes out tomorrow. I'm going to remind everybody of that. It's like, don't push it.
I'm going to leave at like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Gonna camp all day.
Take a nap.
Whatever
you got
it takes.
You got a wicked nice area with the field there and all the tents laid out. And I think that's super cool. And you got the arch, the anchor down arch, I'll call it. Just the whole base camp is super cool. It was really like, I was hooked before the race started and with the vibe.
He wasn't even running.
I wasn't even running. I've never run anchor down. I've always said this. Everyone keeps trying to get me to do hamster wheel. I go, I don't know. I think anchor down has to be my first. And then they go, well, you can't. You have to do another ultra first.
That's true.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm not one for like handouts. I'm like, okay, yes, I would have to qualify.
Oh, you're not going to get a handout from this race.
No, exactly. Like if Jay called me and said, hey, man, thanks for doing the podcast. Why don't you run in the 6 hour? I'd be like, no, I can't take a handout.
No, can I tell you inside story, right? You talk
about okay, I thought you were going to invite me. I was like, don't do it.
No, inside story. I think it was right after COVID. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to give too many details because the world would know who it was. But I got a call.
It's okay. We can say it was Courtney Dauwalter or like some or Scott Jurek. Cool.
There we go.
But I got a call from somebody that definitely would have put up something potentially world record worthy at Anchor Down a month before the event. And he or she was very upset with me on the phone because we were making no accommodation. And they were like, wow, we've heard good things about the race. We want the press coverage of it. We're going to bring it to your little state. And I was like, you're not getting it. I'm like, good luck. Go do it somewhere else. Sign up like everybody else. Like, I think the thing about ADU, obviously, I keep saying authentic because that's something we pride ourselves on. But we also announce, like, everybody knows the rules. So when we announce the entrant list, that's the entrant list. Now, there's certain rules. You could move up or down in that entrant list. If you qualified for the 24 and you're feeling really good up until a week before the race, you can move from the 12 to the 24. You can move from the 24 down to the 6. You could play the rules of what is written in the code of the ADU, right? But outside of that, we don't mess around. And I got so much flack from that runner, including a nasty email after, like, I'll tell my friends never to run the race. Like, we don't need your friends to run the race. Like,
you fill it up no matter what.
Yeah.
So,
and here's the thing, right? Like, Chris Capellini, I forget what year, maybe it was 2019. Chris put up like one of the best 24-hour runs in the country. And it doesn't, it like at Anchor Down, like on that trail.
He continues to amaze me no matter what, but just knowing how difficult it can be and him throwing up like one of the best in the country, that's mind-blowing. That's fantastic.
And it goes to show you, though, like anything, right? And I love our sport, and I love everybody involved in our sport, and I love the business around the sport. And obviously business is a reality that we all have to deal with. We all have to feed our families. We all have to pay our mortgages, or these days our rents, and just maybe buy a banana at the end of the week, like with inflation. It's crazy. But, he puts up this great performance, and we've had those, but we don't get the attention of Anchor Down because Anchor Down does zero advertising, zero social media advertising. We're not like calling up, getting the back cover of like magazines, right? So at the end of the day, it does have a little bit of a bubble, and a lot of people don't know about it because we don't have UTMB Western States. Like, there's not like a congratulations, you got into the Western States back cover of Ultra Running magazine every year. everything we've gotten because something really cool happens. There's this murmuring about it, and we've just decided to keep it that way. But like you were saying, there's no shortcuts. It's like where you get in. Like our photographer John Packer is running this year, and he texts me every day how stressed out he is, and like he didn't get any like. Hey, I'm like, on January 2nd, 7 o'clock at 6:55. I was like, good luck, man. It's gonna stink if you don't get in.
So who's going to be taking pictures this year if it's not John?
It's still John. Well, he's bringing a buddy, so his buddy's going to take pictures the first couple hours.
His pictures, oh man, his pictures are always fantastic.
Isn't he amazing?
For the sunsets and always amazing.
You know who else is amazing? Hannah and her amazing awards.
Yes.
I love Hannah.
We can't not talk about her.
No, her awards I think added so much to the event because it's something like I could. Like, back in the early days, I never figured out the time to like give attention to. So like the awards we were giving out were like your standard like road race trophy. And it just was what a missing piece of Anchor Down. And then she comes out, I think after winning it, which is like a great irony when you think about it. So she got one of those like trophies that's like on the mantle that like, so she's probably got like 5K trophies from like winning a local 5K. And then it's like grand champion of Anchor Down's like right there next to it. The same thing, right? And then she starts giving back to the event and like creating these handmade masterpieces. So no, I totally agree with you. It added so much. Those are really fun to give to people.
Was the year she won it the year that like YouTube documentary was made? Someone made a big YouTube video. That was like our introduction for me and Erica to Anchor Down. And I have to mention, you've mentioned Chris a few times, but Paul and Lori as well. They're in that video, and Hannah was featured in it too. Was that the year she won?
Yeah, no, she won, I believe the year, you know what? She won, I think, don't quote me on this. Hannah, if you're watching, I might be wrong. I think she won in 2019, and then COVID hit, and Above Summit Productions in Boston wanted to do a doc on it, and they did that. We kind of did that during COVID, I remember, because we were like, it was like that masking phase where we're like hugging each other with masks on. So I think that came out in 2020, late 2020 during COVID, the year I think ADU was canceled. I think she won it in 2019. And it's funny now. Okay. It's like you'll go to Anchor Down and they'll be like, you'll hear people like walking up behind Lori and Paul and Cap and Hannah, and they're like whispering. They're like, she was the one. He was.
Yeah.
There's like this lore around them at Anchor Down, which is pretty cool. Because I think people, just like me, I look at Badwater and the same thing. I remember watching the documentary Running on the Sun, which I think was made in like the 80s or 90s, maybe late 90s, about Badwater. And I remember just watching that and running into people that I saw in that documentary and like whispering to my wife, like, look who it is. She'd be like, I don't know who it is. Like, it's the guy from the documentary. And it was just like, think about how lucky we are though. Think about we're involved in a sport where you could watch a documentary about some of the best in class of that sport. And then you could line up next to them and give them a high five and shake their hand. And they're going to stop their competition, potentially a top 10 in the country, like Cap's situation, or Paul's situation, who's put up like 5 or 6 finishes, or Hannah, who, right, the second or third female in Anchor Down history to go 100. And they're going to stop and be like, are you all right? Do you need the bandage from like my pack? Or like, do you need some advice? Or like your stomach's rumbly? Like, what can I give you from my pack that's going to help? Or my crew's going to work on your right toe, right? Like, what other sport can you get that where the most elite that you could know about are sometimes towing the line right next to you?
That's a really cool feeling.
Yeah. You guys got to check out this video. I'll put it in the show notes. You also have to go back. There's an awesome inside story about that video when Hannah finished the race and crossing the finish line. You're going to have to go back and listen to her episode from last year. I'm not going to spill the beans because you got to listen to her. She's amazing too. But there's a great inside scoop there on the episode, Hannah's On the Runs episode, about the finish of that race in that video. I loved it. So she was awesome. That video funny. Was just like, it got me so amped up because I had no clue what I was getting into. Erica's like, will you come and support me? I've never done anything like this. I don't know if I'm crazy or stupid. And we just started the podcast. We only had one episode
Really?
When we showed up to Anchor Down.
Episode 2 was my recap of my first year doing Anchor Down.
Oh, that's cool. That's
yes.
Cool.
Yes.
And I have to say, so I've been rocking the 12-hour. That seems to be my Anchor Down jam so far.
She's soft.
Eventually I'll graduate.
Soft.
Whatever.
She has to do the 24.
But that first year that I did it was 2021, and I did take home one of your little trophies, but that was actually my first trophy. So I was pumped by it. I didn't care that it was you bought it from a store or whatever.
Well, then the next year, she's like, she saw the trophy before. She goes, I need this. The one that Hannah made. She goes, I need this.
They're gorgeous.
And she's like, you need to stay on top of me. Make sure, watch the standings and everything. Me, I had to actually work.
Motivation. It honestly was motivation because it was so well done. It was so beautiful. And I was like, I want one of those. I'm going to work for this to try to take home one of those awards.
And I think it was worth it. It makes it so much better that it's created by somebody who's been through the same fight and struggle that you have, and that came out at that event overall champion. And I don't know how much you got into it with Hannah. I did watch the episode, but it was a while ago.
It was.
But I don't know how much you got into it with her, but her story about Anchor Down, you know what? Let me just say this. Here's my vision of her, okay? Hannah comes into that race, and I've known Hannah, when I was still ultra running, and we would be sharing stories, and I was helping out with my buddy's run bike store over in Taunton, and she would come in as a customer. And I would help out him a couple days a week, and I had been race directing a little bit, and Anchor Down wasn't even out yet. And I'd be just talking about ultra running with her, athlete to athlete, not RD to athlete. So I've known her before she was even in the sport. And she came to Anchor Down the first year, and I forget, I'm pretty sure it was 6 hour. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure she was 6 hour, 12 hour, graduated, and was not even in the standings in 6 and 12. And then goes 24-hour grand champion, and then has come back every year to be in contention for defending it. That's the most Anchor Down thing. Well, there's a lot of things that are the most Anchor Down thing. Last year's women's finish was maybe the most Anchor Down thing.
Oh my God. It had me on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
I was home at that point, but I was following all of the updates that you guys were doing on Instagram and Facebook and stuff. And oh my God, Kathy.
It was great. It was great. I try to tell people, you don't even understand. You have these, you have people in the park. So for anybody listening that doesn't have context of this, you have people in the public park at Colt State Park, walking their dogs, cooking hot dogs, playing Frisbee with their kids. They have zero context that the women next to them are competing in a regionally competitive ultramarathon that have run 105 miles each, that are within 50 feet of each other with minutes left on the clock, and they're in contention for passing each other, and they're talking with their crews about how the woman looks behind them. Do they look fresh? Do they look like I could drop her? Does she look, she's starting to talk smack. I think I can get her. And then when they pass each other, they're hugging each other and congratulating each other before beating each other by 30 seconds. It's crazy. And people are just good job, runner. Go get him. I think the finish line's 1 mile away. Good 5K,
Oh my God. It really does kind of show you that ultra running it can be in a world of its own. Especially if you're just out there enjoying your day, fishing off the side of the state park. They have no idea. Oh my gosh.
I don't know if you guys ever noticed, but we literally put out signs a couple of years ago with a little paragraph that's the runners you are seeing are competing in a 24-hour ultramarathon. Please get out of their way. Because we'd have people good job, 5K, yeah, all right, good job. And they have no context. It's no. If they're stumbling, please, get out of their way. It might take them 100 yards to stop.
True. That's probably a good idea that you put those out, because who knows? Yeah, you get so tired you can't walk in a straight line, and everything's fair game.
Yep.
So we're going into is this year 9 of Anchor Down, or is it?
Yeah, year 9.
Okay, so for the past few years that I've been running it, you've had some themes, like the shirt I'm wearing was Anchor Down Chasing Twilight. And then we've had, this year's going to be Forged in Fire. So I'm just curious how you think of these themes for each race year.
Ooh, they're usually born out of, sometimes they're a song lyric, right? I'll just be listening to something that kind of hits home. But But Anchor Down to me is very much all about, and it's a little bit of my personality coming out, but it's a little bit about chasing dreams and realizing that like time is limited. And Chasing Twilight is a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
I think one year it was Earn the Sunset. I think that's my favorite. I think that was 2019.
Oh, awesome.
Earn the Sunset, right? But I'm like, at the end of the day, however you finish your day, whether it's a cup of, like hot tea or your favorite movie or an ice cold beer or whatever your process is for ending your day, I feel like the best days are the ones that are hard earned. And there, as runners, you know that, right? There's a difference between, like, let's pretend you're sitting at the pool with your family, or you're putting your feet up on the deck at the end of a long week. That feeling is so much better when you've earned it, right? On the other side of some hell that you went through, whether it was work or school or fitness or running, if you earned it and it was a bad one and it was hard, it's so much better to put your feet up in that chair. And a lot of, the theme of Anchor Down is largely that. So every year I'm just trying to find a different way to say that with a different spin on it to give context to the theme of that year. So it's always a little bit different, but when you think about it, Forged in Fire, I think I probably heard it in a song or I just came up with it, or somebody suggested it to me probably, and I'm not giving them credit because I'm forgetting. But I think it's just another example, and they're all obviously in the same breath, right? But Forged in Fire for this year is just like everybody's towing the line at Anchor Down. And I could say this as race director, the amount of stories that we have that I won't go into because they're so personal, but the amount of personal battles that all these people are bringing to the starting line of Anchor Down makes them the athletes that they are, and is going to make the story that they leave on that course forever. So when they're done in Anchor Down, their story's told in their own personal way, but that story is forged in the fire of all the challenges they've had leading up to the Anchor Down. So it's just me trying to find new ways to say that every year, and but fun ways to say that every year that give that year separate context from the year before.
Well, it's perfect. Whatever your method is for coming up with these, they're perfect, and they totally fit the essence of the race.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, Erica's a big fan of themes.
Gotta come back again. I'll try to think of a new persona.
Well, I'm doomed in like 20 years. If we're sitting down here for the 30th rendition of the Anchor Down, you guys are probably like making fun of me because you'll be like, getting desperate, Jay? Like that one's pretty far.
This was 2021. So I think you're getting back into repeating things. I won't hold it against you.
Come to Erica for theme advice or something. Maybe she'll help you create one if you ever needed it.
There you go.
Hey, I got a big question.
Okay.
I am building a list called the Code Brown Commandments, and I gave you a little preview of this earlier before we went live, but I'm building this list. It's like, thou shall leave no trace, or thou shall use baby diaper rash cream to cure chafing overnight. Is there any advice you could give runners that we could add to our Code Brown Commandments to help them avoid an oh crap moment and have an enjoyable experience? It could be Anchor Down related. It could be running related. It could be, hey, treat your race director nicely. Thou shalt treat the race director nicely to have a good time. I don't know. Do you have anything for us to add to the Code Brown Commandments?
Yeah, so if I talk, I'll give two, if that's okay. I'll give one that's boring, but it comes to mind a lot. Practice with the things that you're going to compete with on the day that matters to you most, whether that's Anchor Down or another event. Put yourself in situations that mimic the conditions that you want to succeed at. So if you're running Anchor Down, I'm shocked at how many people show up every year at Anchor Down and they go, well, I've never run trails at night before, but I've run 20 ultras. I can't tell you the amount of people that have lost front teeth at Anchor Down. So, and obviously we all are naive when we take on new challenges, right? But like if you're signing up for Anchor Down or you're signing up for Badwater, you're signing up for these higher respected races around the country, put yourself in situations that mimic that. And I think you're going to be so much more comfortable on race day, and then you're going to have so much more fun and success on race day and create the memory and the legacy on that course that you want to create. When it comes to ultra running in general, I'll say this. And I think one year I said this at Anchor Down. It might have scared people a little bit. But if you go into an event and maybe this is slightly personal for me. I'll give one personal tidbit about me. I wish I had this crazy pedigree of ultra running, and I don't. I love it more than anybody, or I like to think I love ultra running more than anybody. I have one successful 100-miler to my belt. Because for me, the success for Jay Paganelli in ultra running was running 100 miles in under 24 hours. And I pretty much beat up my body pretty well to accomplish that and had a lot of failures along the way. But again, recreational runner who just defined that as my personal success. The year I got it, and sometimes I go into this as a race director. Like if I'm going to go into a very difficult stretch of race directing, and I know I'm not sleeping for 40 hours and we have all these challenges to overcome and it's 102 degrees or there's a tornado coming in or all the weird challenges I have. If I own the fact that that day is going to be incredibly, incredibly difficult, and the reward on the other side of that is going to match the difficulty, I'm ready for the difficulty. So one year at Anchor now, and I kind of looked at the crowd. I think it was the year we were going to be the record heat 2 or 3 years ago. And I looked out at everybody and I was like, this is going to be, I don't care what you've done. This is going to be one of, if not the hardest race for 99% of the people in this crowd. Own it, prepare for it, and mentally start on that trail going, these next 6, 12, or 24 hours are going to absolutely suck. If you embrace that, you are going to be so rewarded on the other side, just for the sense of accomplishment that you have. And I feel like people, all of us, like get good at that, right? I'm not trying to be David Goggins right now, but we do. We get good at that. You get good at embracing that. And it's a skill that I think transcends just ultra running. It takes you into your daily life, your relationships, your work, your passions, and obviously ultra running. So just look at Anchor Down if you're signed up for this year. God bless you. Look at the weather forecast we get next weekend. Look at it and go, this is gonna suck. And when you embrace that, you're gonna have so much fun. But you can't go into it expecting that there's no fire, right? Because you're forged in that fire, sticking on theme with this year. So just embrace it.
You stole my last question with your answer.
Sorry.
My last question or comment, however I was going to phrase it, was your pre-race speech, in my opinion, is almost like legendary. You have everyone's attention, the entire crew, staff, volunteers, the runners, the support crew like myself. Not a single person says a word. You stand up on the tailgate of a U-Haul truck, not a picnic table, because apparently someone fell off a picnic table, and you have all their attention, and that is exactly what you tell them. And it's a little longer of a speech, but you're like, this is going to suck, and you prepare them. And I've never seen we're talking 250, 300 people probably, just all in like the shape of a U surrounding you, and you have their full 110% attention when you give that speech. And in my mind, it's like, here it comes. And I recorded the entire thing last year. I should try to find it.
Yeah,
but it's a legendary speech.
Don't find it, please. Leave that off the internet.
Yeah,
it's long-winded but meaningful.
Yeah, there was a story about a picnic table though, like not just Erica trying to get on it, but didn't you do it from a picnic table?
We joked about it, and I guess somebody did fall off of it, and I was like, "Should I stand up here?" Me being all like,
"Oh no, you want to hear
tired, exhausted."
You want to hear stupid RV experience, right? So one year I drive by this place here in southern Massachusetts, near where I live in Rhode Island, and I'm on my way home, and this guy's got all these cut up trees. So I just pull over, and I'm like, "Hey, could you cut a oak tree in the shape of a podium, one giant oak tree that you just climb up on at the end of the race, and we'll carve an anchor in it, and you put first, second, and third, like the Olympics, but more badass, like an ultra." And the guy's
yes.
like, "Yeah, I could do that." So stupid idea for two reasons. Number one, the next day I went to pick it up. We had to figure out how to move said oak tree. Number two, it was this awkward height that looked amazing. So we get through the 6 hour, the first year, we get through the 12 hour, and then we call up our winners of the 24-hour race at the end of the day. And 2 out of the 3 cramped up getting off the oak tree. And 2 out of those 2 stepped down, collapsed, and went home in an ambulance.
No.
So And now I laugh because they're, like we laughed about it, like when I called to check on them later in the hospital room. But like now we try to keep the height at which we ask you guys to step up on. So I say that with a little bit of tongue in cheek pride, because like you find me the race where your podium finishers like get up there with a smile on their face and then go in the ambulance, and that's Anchor Down.
That is the spirit of Anchor Down for sure. And I probably am going to stay on the ground. Provided I don't know. Let's see how I do this year. But all right, Jay, I have one final question. And I think this could go more for Anchor Down, but you're welcome to give a choice too. But we have a Spotify playlist and we like to invite our guests to add a song to it. But would you rather have one for yourself or one that embodies ADU?
Ooh. So I got to come up with a song.
Mm-hmm. Oh. You can take your time too. We can cut this out. all the extra stuff.
Yeah, Erica can cut it out. Not a big deal.
I mean, I would leave it. I don't know. I'm not the genius with the editing skills here, but
it's a long way to the top to rock and roll. I think that's the full name of the song.
You want to rock and roll? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, like and that is like Anchor Down. Like you want to like it's difficult to get into. Guess what? It's a long way to the top to rock and roll. You want to succeed at Anchor Down. It's a long way. Like you want the 5K is more fun and more manageable. You're right. It's a long way to the top and rock and roll. You want to rock and roll.
5Ks aren't fun.
Hey, your dude.
I think that's a song they end every show on. I just saw like an AC/DC tribute band called Dirty Deeds. They're awesome. I've seen them like 5 years in a row. They come to NASCAR every year. And I think that's the last song they always play. Like they come back or it's the one they play before they go away for a minute and come back for an encore.
Yeah.
It's a long way to the top if you want to. Yeah, that's a freaking that's
perfect.
Nobody's picked that yet on your show. I think that was like
no.
I thought I was giving you the most cliche answer.
Nothing against our past guests, but some people have picked some songs. I'm just like running, listening to it, and I text Erica, "Who picked this song? It's terrible."
Yeah,
when that song seal comes on,
I'm gonna be like, "Yes."
Yeah, that's a clear winner to me. I mean, I just think that one encapsulates ultra running and Anchor Down in general.
Yeah,
then it's perfect for the playlist.
Awesome.
Yes, it was awesome. Jay, this was so cool, man. We've met you a couple times, but we haven't really gotten to meet you because you're busy, you're working, you have your passion project and you're running around and I'm just like, look at that guy with the great head of hair, just like me, and doing your thing, and you got a great team. Let me tell you though, your staff and your volunteers are amazing because they're so nice to us. Like we feel like we're really close to Zach and Ainsley in Kansas, and like they're just so amazing. And Patrick Karen, like we met Patrick through your race, and we've had him on the pod, and we've run into him multiple times. Super amazing people. Your staff, like I can keep going on.
Same.
I'm going to stop. But you put on a great event. I'm sad. I don't think I'll make it this year, but I do think yesterday when everyone's listening, I will be there with you guys at the course prep and helping you get ready. So that's the plan. But this is super cool. I'm super excited to have you on. You're a cool dude, and just I watch a lot of the things you do when you're out there directing. One question.
Yeah.
How much sleep do you get in that entire weekend?
Ooh, it's gotten better over the years because of my team. But there were probably 2 years where I didn't sleep at all. And as I've gotten older, I just turned 41, and I can't run as much as I used to. So I'd argue my fitness has also degraded a little bit with age. So I can't do it anymore. I feel like I can't give athletes in the last 12 hours the attention that I used to be able to give them on no sleep. So I probably get a 3-hour nap. I usually try to hide in my tent around 2 a.m. and sleep till like 5 a.m. But you guys know, you've been at Anchor Down, like that. Even just getting 3 hours is hard because you feel like you're missing all the action, and there's the noise, and there's the humidity that just like makes your tent like.
Oh my God, so humid.
Yeah,
I was miserable that first year as a crew.
Yeah, no, there's something
rough, but
so I know we're wrapping up here, but there's something about that trailhead in that forest and that at that night. Like I run that trail every week. All year round, but there's something different about it on Anchor Down weekend. It's like the humidity's high. I don't know what it is. The trails the trail snakes come out a little bit higher. It's like, so it's just impossible to get sleep. So not much, but a couple hours.
Yeah, it's a great weekend. I love that you put it on a hot weekend. I don't know if we went into detail about like why you picked that weekend, but it's a tough weekend. You don't want anyone to just sign up. It's a hard race.
Exactly.
It's you want to maybe scare some people away to get like the true someone who really wants to tackle this because it's hard.
You gotta earn it. You really have to earn it.
Long way to the top.
Yeah, you do a great job.
Thanks, guys. And honestly, I think at the end of the day, and not to butter your biscuit too much, but I just think anybody who's like growing the sport by putting out positivity and welcoming people to the sport and sharing information about things that are happening that are positive in the sport is a good thing. So I've had a blast listening to your stuff and hearing the other people that I know and don't know. So keep doing what you're doing, because I think this is the stuff that grows our running community, and that's the good work, is like getting people into our sport. So keep it up.
Our pod fam, you're an official pod fam member. Everyone who comes in, you're part of the pod fam.
I said to my wife tonight, I have a pod later, so I'm busy, and she made fun of my use of the term pod, but I felt, in full disclosure, very
that's
cool
a thing.
thing.
That's an official term.
Yeah,
100%.
Later, I'm going to post about it on the Insta, and look at me. I'm not.
Yes. Are you even on Insta? I think you are.
I'm so bad with social media. It's amazing people know about our races because I'm real.
Well, get ready this week. It's going to be all over there. And everything from this episode is going to be on because it's ADU week, baby.
Nice.
And I'm going to pump the tires for it as much as I can because I love it. And if I can't be there, I need to try to is Patrick going to be there doing your social media so I can follow throughout the night?
Yeah, Patrick will be there. So if you know big personalities in the running community will be there. Patrick Aaron's doing our social media coverage. Stephen Blyce from the Rhode Island running scene, the Boston running scene, is doing our on-course coverage. So he'll be talking to people actually at Anchor Down on a microphone. Pat Karen will be talking to social media on the microphone. So we'll be in good company with a bunch of guys keeping us going on what's going on. And we'll have our normal TV with live stats at the race. And then for anybody who's interested, if you have a runner in the race, we have upgraded to live tracking. So if you're on the website during the race, the results link from the second the race starts is live, unless our internet goes down, which usually happens once or twice throughout the event for 5 minutes. But if you're clicking refresh on whatever your race is, you're seeing actual data from what lap your runner is on up to date by that lap. So they might be a little bit ahead, they might be a little bit behind, but you should get an accurate picture of what's going on. And then you can marry that with the live coverage from Pat Karen on social media, which will give you an actual picture. And obviously, as the events go on, a better picture of who's in the lead pack.
Well, that's great. I'm going to do that because I'll have to follow Erica because I don't think I'll be there.
Have FOMO.
I will link. I will find all these links so you guys can follow Erica and everyone. I'll throw it in the show notes for this episode. So it is ADU week. It's Tuesday right now. It's Friday at 7 p.m. and Erica's doing the 12-hour. There's so many other people out there doing it. Like Maurice is doing it.
Maurice.
I'm sure Hannah's doing it again. Mm-hmm. Candace will be there volunteering. Zach and Ainsley.
Lori and Paul and Chris and
yeah, all these people will be doing it. Follow the social media. I'll tag your social media. If Patrick ever can't make it, call me.
You got it.
I'll do your social media.
Love it.
I would love to do that more.
He's
so
better
give me
at
a call
it than I am.
or maybe next year. I can plan more in advance.
What you gotta do? You guys gotta drop a hint to Pat Karen that he's got to toe the line at Anchor Down because we'd like to see what he could do at Anchor Down.
Going to mark the clip right here. Patrick Karen, you got to toe the line. You got to toe the line at Anchor Down, Patrick. And don't feel like the social media is going to go down when you toe the line because I will come in there and I'll step up and do my part.
You have a good replacement. You can run. He can social.
There we go. There we go.
I did say next time I can make it to ADU, I want Erica to do the 24. When she does the 24, I said I will be there, but I will also volunteer. And I know that's months ahead of planning where you need me on your color-coded spreadsheet there. So I will do something. I'll run to the grocery store and grab more watermelon. I will hang out at the other side of the state park and give people ramen noodle soup or something. I'll do whatever you need when I volunteer. But she has to do the 24-hour.
All right.
And don't listen to this, Erica. But Jay, I'll do it anyway. Another year, I'll do it.
I've got to graduate eventually, so just let me get through this year first. Let me get through this year.
I'm excited for you guys. I'm bummed if I don't make it. Let's say if maybe something happens. Maybe.
There you go. Well, Anchor Down will be ready for you when you're ready to return.
Well, I'm glad I'm going to be able to help out next week, and we'll talk about that in the Tros. But Jay, thanks so much for doing this. This was a ton of fun. I'm really glad we did this. It's cool to hear like everything from a race director's perspective. We love talking to them. Erica tried directing a race a couple years ago, and it was
not
like,
for me.
Holy cow!
My mind was blown. So that's where all my respect comes from. I know sort of what it's like. This is like a whole nother animal.
So guys, go out there and support Jay and support True North Running. Like this is your full-time job, right?
This is all I do. Yep.
This is all he does. Go out there and support him and True North. Go do some of his other races. We'll go to some of the Narragansett Running Festival. We'll do that one year.
It's a lot of
fun.
Not
not this year.
Prepare for heat and humidity.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it's tough. So thanks, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Have a great night. We'll see you at Anchor Down, and keep doing what you're doing for the running community.
See you in a few short days.
All right, guys.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed Jay Paganelli on the On the Runs podcast. That was fun.
That was awesome, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm not like even more pumped now than I actually was from before to just get there and run again. I think I'm actually a little bit better at trails, so hopefully those trail snakes won't get me this year.
I hope that was good. I tried to stay on. I struggle when you get.
That was amazing.